here every Friday at 9 a.m.
Yes, sir.
That's the biggest progress.
Yes, sir.
Roseanne, why don't you tell us about why you have your guest here today?
Sure. We've had the opportunity to share a lot with everybody about the Early Learning Coalition and resources available for parents and caregivers over the past several weeks. And we understand there's a lot more needs that our families have than just child care. And we have the ability, we have the resources, and we definitely have those subject matter experts on the phone and in the room with us, and thought it would be a good opportunity for your audience to hear other resources available.
When you talk about the challenges that people face just from without caregiving, tell us some of those challenges and why the panel we have today will be helpful in talking about it.
Sure. We have families that are unable to pay rent, they're unable to pay electric, they don't have transportation. They have, what do they do for employment? How do they go about it? Where do they start? What do they need? What's a resume? So all of those things are needs that they have that our community has resources.
Well, then the first person I want to talk to then is Cheryl. Because Cheryl, if somebody looks, I know a lot of people now say, well, my first alternative is I go to the county offices and say, hey, I'm doing the best I can do here. I'm trying my darndest to make ends meet. Is there anything available that the county can help me with?
Yes, so my department, Community Services, oversees many of the grants that the county receives to benefit our residents. And we partner with United Way and Early Learning Coalition. Mostly we are a funder, and we fund the nonprofits such as United Way, Early Learning Coalition, Interfaith. So we do offer some direct services in-house, two of which are down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. And if you own your home and live in that home, we can offer some renovations to that home. But currently, all of our contracts for rent assistance are with other nonprofits that distribute it to residents.
So if I come to the county, that'd be a good place to start, because the county would then give me a good direction of who to go talk to for my particular need.
Yes, so they could call our office, and then we can direct them to the organization that has the money.
Scott, now you're at United Way. We talked off the air about how I really give you props, because you have to walk in and see Bear Bryant in your hallway every day, Nick Saban. And I mean, Tony James, is her pictures on the wall when you walk in. What are some of the...
Tony created a great legacy for our organization.
She really did.
She was with it for so many years and was such a pillar in this community. So it is kind of sometimes a blessing and a curse to follow her, because we're trying to not screw up all the good things she did. And just kind of keep that growing.
That's what I'm trying to do here. Larry and Robin did such a good job for 30 years. I'm just trying not to screw it up there, what they created. I'm trying my best, and I got a gold star for doing so. So I'm just.
You're doing well.
What are some of the ways the United Way can help people in need in this community that are trying their darndest to make it?
Yes.
And they just keep coming up with hurdle after hurdle.
Sure. So, so we've continued. We talked about Tony and the time she spent at United Way. We've continued what United Way has done for years. We fund 25 different programs that meet a variety of needs in education, health, and financial stability. A few years ago, in 2016, we started our Strong Families Initiative, which is really where we work with families to help them go from a position where they need assistance periodically to financial stability where they can meet those needs on their own. And then, most recently, the world has really been turned upside down in the last 12 to 18 months. Yeah. And so we have a program now, our CAP program, it's COVID assistance. And so we're assisting families with rent and utilities if they've been impacted by COVID-19. And by the end of this year, our anticipation is that we're going to have served over 2,500 families here in Marion County.
And it's just not, with COVID-19 turning the world upside down, it's just not the typical, when you hear the low socioeconomic families. They're families that before COVID, when they had a job they could go to and they were, as a server at a restaurant, were making $60,000, $65,000 a year. And people say servers don't. Yes, they do. A good server can make a good check.
Yeah.
They're making $60,000, $65,000 a year. The restaurant closed for 6 months. These are people that were not prepared, or sometimes life has a funny way of, it's not going to affect me, and then it does. but you're seeing different people than you're used to seeing. I bet a lot of times coming in.
You're absolutely correct. We are seeing that, and these are folks that have not had to navigate the social services system, so we're trying to make that as simple and as clear for them as possible. It's also one of the reasons why it's important to have all three of us sitting here today, is because as we work together and as we partner, and we've got Ryan with us on the phone and what he does at the CEP, the more we work together collaboratively, the easier we can make this system for folks like you're talking about to navigate, to get to the organization that can assist them with their needs.
Ryan Lilly, he's the Vice President of Business Creation at the CEP. Ryan, in this time where people are maybe having to transition out of the jobs they've been used to or they know how to do, and they're transitioning, how important is entrepreneurship and letting people know if you got a side gig that the CEP can help you turn it into a permanent gig, and maybe that's an outlet for people to start making money and back to achieving what they were before COVID?
Yeah, it's huge, Tom. I mean, we have people all the time who are coming to us, and they've either transitioned out of a traditional career, or they're looking to start something new, and that's who we serve in our area here at the CEP is people who are entrepreneurs who are getting out there starting a business. We've had some child care providers, people who have started child care businesses, present at one of our weekly events that we do, 1 Million Cups. And child care is just so vitally important to our local economy. People can't work or even run a business if they're an entrepreneur unless they have reliable child care. And then, the other thing, too, is that education is so important to a talented workforce. That's been one of our big buzzwords around here lately has been workforce. And, it all starts with early childhood education all the way up through our K through 12 schools. So child care is just so important, whether you're working a traditional job or whether you're trying to run a business.
Roseanne, we keep hearing about that it's, with the changes that have happened, people have now been home, they've been working at home, the kids have been at home, the spouse has been at home. The world we live in has changed, and it's starting to loosen a little bit. But do you see that this is going to be an issue that we have to stay on top of and address for a few years to come still?
The child care.
No, the way people have to reinvent themselves, so they have to come up with different child care options.
Yes.
These are things people may not. You may have had a traditional house where the man or the husband or the wife, depending on which one was the breadwinner, worked outside the home, and the other one played mom or Mr. Mom. Right. And then with the pandemic, things have changed where now both of you have to go get a job. Well, little Mary and little Mark, they still have somebody who has to care for them. And these are positions people aren't used to sometimes.
Exactly, and yet our community is very fortunate. The coalition contracts with 105 child care providers in this county. So the providers are out there, and through partnerships with the CEP, United Way, the county, there's always opportunities for people to even go into the early learning child care business, and for us to be able to direct them as they go into other lines of employment. But absolutely, and making the community aware that, number one, they're not alone. That's why parent education workshops through United Way, through the Early Learning Coalition, what CEP is doing, all of these things are out there to make people aware that they are not alone. The resources are there, and all they need to do is to call.
With the county, Cheryl, with the county being the central area that we all look to for guidance, and with, I think it's 100 people a month they're moving to Marion County. Is
It's 150.
150 a month.
Week.
A week, not even a month. 150 a week.
Yes.
So 600 a month are relocating to Marion County. Not only do we already have an issue where child care and the providing of it and it is right now a critical issue, but with so many people moving into this county on a regular basis, it's something the county's going to have to address for years to come.
So you're on point, and we are actively working on, the county's entering into a 5-year strategic plan, the next 5-year strategic plan. My department is also we partner with United Way, ELC, and CEP. Workforce housing is number one on our list. So the 4 areas of our department the 4 priority areas for our department is community development, housing, affordable housing, homelessness, and then health and human services. So those are the 4 areas we focus on in my department at the county. Workforce affordable housing is hot on the ticket right now. And so, to your point, 150 people move into Marion County. We right now, currently today, the supply and demand is
ridiculous.
Yes.
In the demand high,
So-
supply low.
correct. So on Tuesday, I called the Ocala Marion County Board of Realtors to find out how many active listings were available that day.
It's a scary, scary low number.
734, and there were only 48 rentals.
Right.
So we're working on developing areas or coming up with some key areas that development should occur, and how can we get developers moving quicker.
The scary part of this is I don't think we can build fast enough to keep up right now because of the hole we're in.
Correct.
It's scary how little bit of product you have to offer to people that are moving here. I know that we have realtors literally coming through our subdivision on a daily basis, knocking on the door saying, "Hey, would you be interested in selling your home?"
Yeah.
And they tell us the price you could get for it, and I would go, "Yeah, that would be interesting," but then I would be homeless because there's no place for me to go.
Right.
And when you talk about homeless, I want to bring that up for a minute because it's a hot button in the city right now. And everything. You bring up homeless, people think homeless are just the guys sleeping on the park bench or sleeping out in the open. Homeless are anybody that's in an extended stay hotel because they don't have an apartment rental or something like that when they're doing the week-to-week stuff. All that, even though they're in a hotel and they have a roof over their head, according to the government numbers, according to the federal government numbers, they still are classified as homeless. And we don't do that in Marion County?
No, so the federal guidelines, if you're living in a hotel, unless you're paid, your hotel is paid for by a shelter, you are not considered homeless.
Really? I thought that for years they had considered them homeless.
So
Yeah,
if
well, I think, Cheryl, just one of the things I think that creates some confusion is it depends on what definition you use. And I'm sitting here between Roseanne and Cheryl. So Cheryl, and what she's referring to is the HUD definition,
Right.
of homelessness. If you look at the Department of Education in the federal government,
Hotels, homeless.
They use a very different
Good point.
definition of homelessness, and then those folks staying in those hotels and anyone
Well,
without a long-term lease is then considered. So that's part of where some of the confusion comes in, is when you've got 2 different federal departments that use different definitions for the same thing.
I was a high school history teacher for 5 years, so maybe that's where I got it from, was the Department of Education.
yeah, because the school boards, the way they count homeless children is much different than how the continuum of care, which Scott sits on,
Yeah.
counts homeless.
Yeah.
So
Let's talk about the United Way for a minute, because people think United Way, United Way, United Way, but the United Way is actually how many actual nonprofits do you guys help? Because it's not the United Way is a farrier that collects and then distributes to numerous nonprofits.
Yeah, that's a big part of what we do. We've got actually when we include individuals or someone wants to make a gift to a specific organization and we help them do that, then the number is 67 nonprofit organizations here in Marion County. There are 25 specific programs that we fund and vet and report to us on a quarterly basis, like the Early Learning Coalition being one of those and their VPK programming. But in addition to that, one of the things that's been new for about the last 5 to 6 years is we have some specific programming. So United Way does not try to step into an area and run programming where there's another nonprofit that does that work. But if there's a bigger level where we need to bring folks together, there are some times where we'll do some specific programming to fill a gap or to meet.
If you recognize a void, you'll step in.
Yeah,
and fill it.
if there's no one currently doing that work, we'll either do one of a couple things. We'll bring some organizations together. We're currently doing that right now as it pertains to the food distribution system and food banks and food pantries. We're bringing folks together with partnerships with the county and the city and others to say how do we best coordinate this system so it's most effective. If we can't find groups that we can bring together and have them fill that need, and this is one of the things that's different now than it was 7 to 10 years ago, is if we have to, United Way will step in and meet that need.
Ryan Lilly, he's on the phone with us from the CEP. Ryan, what are some of the ways the CEP are stepping up in this partnership to help bridge the gap and make sure that families have viable options for jobs, family have viable options for jobs that actually pay enough to make ends meet?
Well, obviously, Tom, we do a lot to bring new employers to the area. Everyone's seen the growth of the logistics sector locally and all the big logistics companies that have come to town. But going back to what you guys were talking about earlier with housing, that is, as Cheryl said, a really, really hot topic right now. Just to give you an idea, I was talking to an entrepreneur yesterday who's a real estate photographer. He's just gotten into doing real estate photography, which you would think, with the housing market would just be on fire. But his greatest challenge, he said, right now, is that he'll be on his way to photograph a property,
and it already
he'll get
sells.
a call from the real estate agent that property is already sold.
Yeah.
And so I heard that last night at our Business After Hours event. And I just thought, wow, that's incredible. So that's going to be a challenge. Workforce, I mentioned that word earlier, but we're doing a lot here. Dean on our staff works with the schools to make sure that we've got those career and technical education programs in place to provide a good workforce. But in my area of entrepreneurship and business creation at the CEP, we're really focused on helping those small businesses, 1-2 person operations, get off the ground and whatever they need along that process, whether it's writing a business plan with them or having them present at our weekly 1 Million Cups event. We've got something we're really excited about called Fast Track. Fast Track is a course that's 10 weeks, and it's open to anybody in the community that's interested in starting a business. And over those 10 weeks, we take them through all the steps of the business process. And next week, we're starting our 4th cohort of that class in Silver Spring Shores at the community center. And that's our intention, too, is to take all of this out into, the county, into some of the, the impacted areas and get the message of entrepreneurship out there.
Roseanne, how powerful of a force is it when you combine the county, the United Way, the CEP, and the Early Learning Coalition to address some of these issues? How powerful of a team is that to address these issues?
It's extremely powerful, and we understand that there are needs. We recognize the needs. We're realistic about the needs, and we also are moving forward. We're doing something about it. We're not just talking about it. From what you just heard from Ryan and Scott and Cheryl, as well as the Early Learning Coalition, we are moving forward to meet these needs to continue to have Marion County a great place to live.
Cheryl, I know there's a lot going on in the county. I know there's a lot of issues that, are very important. How important is this issue of housing versus makes your children have great ways to learn, bringing new people into the county? How important is that to the overall success of the county?
Very important, because we're growing so fast that we need to determine and make sure that we have a vibrant community, and that we're sustainable, and not outgrowing the needs aren't outgrowing what we actually have. And so, to your point with the collaboration, one thing that I'm very proud of is we all do, the CEP, United Way, Early Learning Coalition, and even some of the other providers such as Heart of Florida, the health department, we all regularly meet together to ensure that gaps are being covered, there's enough funding for missing gaps. We try not to duplicate efforts. And we're all walking in the same footstep, and it's working really well.
Yeah, Cheryl, it's and this is one thing I've learned in my role over the last several years. People sometimes will get frustrated when they hear, well, all they do is talk, and is there talk or is there action? And I think there's both. But one of the things I've learned is how much communication and conversation there needs to be amongst these organizations, because there is so much going on, and there is so many folks moving into the community, and that growth is happening, that if we weren't having this conversation, if this coordination amongst all these partners wasn't happening, it would be even more difficult to come up with successful solutions to meet the needs that Marion County has.
Talking with Roseanne Frick.
And
She's the CEO of Early Learning Coalition. Scott Quintel, President of United Way. Cheryl Martin, she's the Community Service Director for Marion County. And, of course, on the line, you just heard Ryan Lilly from the CEP. Ryan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Scott's exactly right. It's all about partnerships. I just had somebody in town visiting yesterday from another city, and they said, why has, Ocala experienced all this growth? What would be the one thing you attribute it to? And to me, it's those partnerships. I've been in communities where there hasn't been that communication, but to come here and to see how well everyone works together, the city, the county, Scott and Roseanne and all these organizations, that's why Ocala is growing right now, is because of how people are communicating and working together.
Let me ask the panel this question. Is there a chance? I hear people all the time, because there are some people that don't want Ocala to grow at the rate it's growing. They'd like to keep the small town Ocala, which I think we keep fairly well with still progressing. But I hear people go, there's such a thing as growing too fast. Is that a legitimate concern, or is it just pull up your bootstraps and figure it out?
I'll jump in and say I think that Cheryl talked about the 5-year plan that the county has, and I think you need to take those steps, because if you're growing in an uncoordinated fashion, if you don't have a plan of where you want to go, how are you going to know when you get there, right? And so I think that can create that impression that you're growing too fast. And one person that I ever hate to give any credit to is Kevin Shealy at the CEP. But he said something that I've heard multiple times, and I think it's very true. When you look at communities, you are either growing
or you're dying.
There is no way that you can stay in place and not change, because the world is changing. And so to keep Ocala, Marion County competitive, to keep it to be a place that folks want to come to, that certainly creates some challenges for the city and the county and others to address. But man, I would really the community that I came to before Ocala, Marion County was in the Midwest, and it was a community that for the last 20 years, the population in that community had decreased by 10% a year for the last 20 years.
So nobody was there.
And everybody's leaving.
Yeah.
And so how do you continue to support the infrastructure that the folks in that area that are going to stay in that area need to have? And so I'm telling you, for folks that haven't experienced both of those opportunities, this is really the way you want to go. You want to have a community that works together, that plans, that is developing how we meet needs and how we continue to move forward collaboratively.
Ryan, from a business standpoint, can you grow too fast?
What Scott said about Kevin saying about, you're growing or you're dying, that's so true. There's this not to get too sciencey on you, but in physics, there's something called entropy. And if something tries to stay the same, it naturally breaks down over time. And so, like Scott said, there's only growing or dying. And so, yes, there's smart growth, and I think, we're taking, very prudent steps towards that with, the city's plan and the county's plan for growth over the next 5 years. But yeah, we've got to keep that momentum going. We've got to keep moving forward.
And with that, we're up against it, so we have to bring it to a close. I want to thank everybody for being here. Ryan Lilly, Cheryl Martin, Scott Quintel, and of course Roseanne Frick. She's here every Friday with the Early Learning Coalition. Thanks so much for everything y'all do for the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the
See you
opportunity to be
next
here.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after this short timeout. This is Ocala Talks with Tom Schmitz on 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, WOCA, The Source.
Career Source, Citrus, Levy, Marion brings together business and community partners, economic development leaders, and educational providers to connect employers with qualified, skilled talent and job seekers with employment and career development opportunities. Tune in the first Wednesday of each month at 9:30 to Career Source, Citrus, Levy, Marion, and learn how they can help you.
Think you know Dex Imaging? Think again. In the office, streamlining communications. In the field, delivering top-notch service, enhancing productivity and reducing downtime. In the data center, a part of the growing digital document revolution. In the world of business, supporting entrepreneurs and helping companies grow.